So I've got my friend James here. James has painted up a beautiful Bayard. James is from the hobby group, and he is the person that I go to whenever I paint a miniature that I'm particularly proud of, and then he completely craps on it and tells me what I've done wrong and what I can do better. Is that right?
To an extent, yes.
Yeah. And when James paints something, then I tell him it looks great, because it usually does, and that is our relationship.
Well, that's some intro, Simon. Thanks very much.
No problem. So, about your Bayard.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about how you painted them, especially the black, because that's what I'm really interested in.
Okay. So when I seen Bayard during one of the Warhammer preview shows, I knew that I had to have him. Like, absolutely.
I felt the same.
Beautiful model. Loads of opportunities for conversion, although I didn't do any on mine. But
Me neither.
loads of opportunities for conversion, and just the pose, that dynamic sword thrust into the orc, and there was loads of options there as well.
I loved it as well.
Yeah.
It's just I kind of feel a wee bit that it would be really good if you had a separate base that you could use them in a game, because it's just a showpiece.
It's a showpiece. Yeah, that's certainly how I approached it as well. Considering that the way it's designed, you're not going to with the base and the rubble that's the orc corpse has been thrown up, and there was never going to be an opportunity to realistically have him on the table. But even just having that pose and the effect was outstanding. And as soon as I seen him, I thought, I'm buying him. I'm painting him. And although I'm a absolute die-hard Blood Angel player, like through and through, my Mephiston was on your channel a couple of weeks back as well.
He's a beauty.
Really, really proud of my Mephiston. But Bayard, really good opportunity to paint black, right, quite nicely to a good high standards. A lot of the red details and red accents there as well. Really nice spot colours, really nice contrast.
So what did you do with the black? How did you...
Black, I mean, black's a hobbyist nightmare, really. It's taken a long time to kind of finesse black to a point where I'm happy with it. Started off as hundreds of recipes do, like standard black primer, and then I did airbrush over with the AK 3rd Gen. So the AK 3rd generation paints they do a line of intense colours, and the AK 3rd generation black in particular is absolutely lovely. Sprays really nice. A couple of really thin coats of that, just thinned down with some water and some flow improver.
Right, okay, cool.
So that way I knew that my black, if I did need to tidy up or if I had to tighten up any edge highlights further on down the line, I would be able to go in with the brush and get the same finish that I would be able to,
that makes sense.
Regardless of whether I was putting on by brush or tidying up with airbrush or whatever. After that, it's a really sort of thick edge highlight with a mix of Incubi Darkness from Citadel and 50-50 mixed with black, the AK black from the previous mix.
Okay.
And then from there, it's a slightly thinner highlight of pure Incubi Darkness. And then again, another highlight of Thunderhawk Blue, again from Citadel. And then finally, a edge highlight of Fenrisian Grey. Then finally, a spot colour of Blue Horror. Cool. Just a couple of dots. And now in between each layer, I would do a layer of AK's 3rd Gen matte varnish. And
between each layer?
Between each layer, yeah.
Right, okay.
So what that'll do is, if you're using a daylight lamp, so especially from above, now the way when you're working with Citadel paints, or really any majority of paints except from Scale Colour, Scale Colour are quite matte when they come out the bottle, but the majority of paints are quite satin in their finish. So when you're using a edge highlight, especially a really sharp edge highlight, in a daylight lamp, it can be quite difficult to see because the light reflects off the paint.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's going onto a matte surface, it's a lot easier to see where you're placing your highlights.
That's a good tip. You've
So
gone way further than I would have gone. Way further.
See, this is why it takes me months to paint anything.
Yeah. James actually said to me, when I said I was starting my Bayard, are you going to try in this one? And I think that means just spend more than one day on it. So I have done that. I think this frustrates the life out of James. So
I think there's a couple of models that come across once every few months, maybe a couple of times a year, that you see it and you think this is worth spending that wee bit of extra time on.
Yeah.
Like, this is worth spend, you know, a couple of hours of focus, you know, that a wee bit of extra dedication, other than painting, you know, horde armies or squads and squads of Primaris Marines. You know, there's a couple coming up. I mean, Angron's going to be the next big one for me, I think, as well.
Me too. We'll do that together.
We'll do that together.
We'll both paint Angron and then do the same style of video.
Look forward to Angron coming at you soon.
The other thing that really catches the eye straight away with your Bayard is the skin tone.
Yeah.
My skin tone is a lot darker. Your skin tone's really light, a bit more yellow than mine.
Yeah.
So how did you do that and why?
Orcs are never something that I've painted before, by and large. I've dabbled a couple of times with some Gretchen and some old school orcs from like 3rd and 4th edition, but the last maybe 10-15 years I've never touched orcs entirely. So I wanted to create not only
you're Imperial scum,
absolute Imperial, straight through and through, loyalist to the core. But I've never painted an orc. But one thing I wanted to capture with my orc, especially, is the not only like a lighter sort of generic skin tone, but to get that texture of the flesh as well. And I knew I had to work up, because the orc, any orc that you paint is a dream usually, because their musculature is so well defined.
Yeah. So you can paint the abs and you can paint
the
the
abs,
and
the biceps, you know, even the veins and the bones sticking out of his fingers, especially on the Bayard model, is phenomenal. So the Orcs skin approach was just very much starting from a really dark base layer and then picking out each muscle individually, and highlighting them up. Now, when I was highlighting, as opposed to doing a flat highlight, I was using Lamy medium. The Lamy medium, what it's doing is it's, you know yourself, it's diluting the paint intensity to the point where you can start building them up. Green recipe, really straightforward. So it started off with a base layer just thinned down of Deathworld Forest, then all over shade 50-50 mix with Lamy medium of Bealtan green. Then it was a 50-50 mix of Elysian green. Yes, thank you, Simon. Elysian green and Ogren camo, and then the final stage, top end, just almost sort of the top muscles facing it was the pure Ogren camo. But again, each stage mixed a little bit with Lamy medium, just to kind of soften that highlight and let it blend with the previous layers.
Nice. I really like that. There is another area where James is up here and I'm down here, and that is the basing.
Don't sell yourself short.
Oh,
Your
no,
bases are great.
No, my bases are basic, to say the least. So your base, it's got the crackle paint on it. It looks brilliant. I really want to know how you did it.
Okay. So the base, I take my basing pretty seriously. It's the final part of the model, but I'll usually do it first, especially because it was going to inform the overall kind of tone for the model that I usually feel that it's going to set the stage as a good base. I use a bunch of third-party products.
Okay.
So to start with, I'm using Agrellan Earth from Citadel, from Games Workshop. I'll also use random sand.
Okay.
Bags of sand that I've picked up from different model shops over the years. I've got it mixed into a wee Tupperware box, and there's all different kind of grains in there. So what I'll do is I'll start with my base, and I've got my thin down PVA, and I'll do that in random patches around the base, and then I'll dip it in sand and I'll let it dry, but then I'll seal it with PVA afterwards, and then in between the bits of the base that I leave blank, I'll fill that with Agrellan Earth. And I'll let that dry completely. So I've got a mix of sand and I've got a mix of Agrellan Earth, a crackle effect on the base at the same time. Then I'll prime it. Typically black. I don't really work with any other primers other than black.
Never white?
Never white, only when I'm doing Zenithal. But even then I'll use white ink. Anyway, so after that I'll do a full all over base of Zandri Dust, and that'll be 2 or 3 layers through the airbrush.
Okay.
Again, easily applicable by brush if you want to do it via your brush. And then I will do a all over wash of Agrax Earthshade, and then I will do a airbrush. It's pretty important at this point. Airbrush of Doombull Brown over the sand, because I want the sand to be different in shade and tone to the Agrellan Earth.
Right, okay.
So I've got a more of a light effect on my Agrellan Earth, light dusty effect on my Agrellan Earth, and then I've got the sand. Now, this was based on my Blood Angels bases because I wanted to create that radioactive desert of Baal, their homeworld.
So Doombull Brown's like a reddy brown.
Reddy brown, yeah.
Right,
So that
yeah.
deep, so almost a mahogany reddy brown. Any reddy brown will do, really. Then the sand or the red brown, the Doombull brown, will get another shade of Agrax just over it. Then the whole thing will get a dry brush again of Xandri dust. So we start with the base of Xandri dust, your shades, and then a dry brush of Xandri dust.
Okay.
Once the Xandri dust dry brush is done, now at that point that's bringing the sand and the Agrellan Earth, the crackle paint, a bit closer together. Then I'll use two pigments. I'll use the Burnt Umber from Vallejo Pigment, which is a lovely brown pigment which creates a dusty effect.
Right.
If you stipple it on.
How do you use your pigments?
Nice and easy. So Army Painter have a lovely, small, really stiff, bristled stippling brush.
Okay.
And I'll just dip it in my pigment. I'll wipe a bit off on a kitchen roll and I'll just dab it on the model.
Right, okay.
It's really difficult to overdo pigments, but it's really, really easy to underdo.
Right. So you don't have to seal them or anything after you've applied them?
I don't.
Right, okay.
I don't. Usually because I'm hitting it already with enough matte varnish to sink a ship.
Yeah.
So, and then finally I'll use Desert Ash, which is another Vallejo pigment, and I'll use that on the Agrellan Earth, the crackle paint.
So that's a light one?
That's a much lighter one. It's almost ivory in colour.
Okay.
But when it goes on, especially when it's going on to a darker surface, it will just create that lovely sand, almost as if there is dust on your model.
I just leave mine on my shelf for about 6 months
well,
and it gets the same effect. So.
That'll do it, aye. Steur, we call it. But yeah, it ties everything together and it just gives you a really nice final effect.
Nice. I mean, it looks brilliant. Any tips on the Agrellan Earth? Because some people have problems. How much do you put on? Do you put on a lot and let it crack, or do you put on a little?
Top tip for Agrellan Earth: start your base with a layer of PVA glue.
Right. Okay.
So the PVA glue will create not only a porous surface for the Agrellan Earth, but it'll be invisible to you, but the surface will then become uneven.
Right.
Your flat plastic of the majority of miniature bases, especially Citadel, they're all stamped out, mass manufactured, they're all perfectly flat. They're solid plastic, there's no porous area for the crackle to do. So putting a layer of PVA glue down first will increase the randomness of your crackles.
Okay, that's a really good tip.
The more you put on, the thicker your cracks are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You do run into the territory of if you're putting on so much that it's just becoming unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just use that spatula, get it nice and smooth across the surface. Your PVA glue on the underneath will take care of the rest.
Right, okay, that's a great tip. I never thought about the PVA thing, so yeah, that's really good to know. Well, thanks for coming on, James. It was a pleasure having you.
It was my pleasure.
That was very informative for you. It was certainly informative for me.
Thank you.
Let me know in the comments below if you want James on again. I certainly do. He's also a Black Library uber nerd. Any lore or Black Library questions that anyone has in our gaming club, they go to James, and James has an encyclopedic knowledge and he'll always have an answer for them.
Always love our Black Library discussions.
Have you read that yet? No.
That's normally how it goes, and then I'll end up inadvertently spoiling the stories. Simon and I super excited about Angron and the upcoming Imperial response. We'd love to see some comments. How do you think they're going to deal with it? Because we're both super excited. I think we're both going to get Angron, and
we're definitely both going to get Angron. We just don't know what will possibly stand against him. That's the big question on our lips.
Definitely not Guilliman.
No, Guilliman will just get flattened. So, sorry, Ultramarine fans. It's the truth. There's nothing we can do about it.
Sorry.
You've been nice to me and it's on camera.
Oh, no! Delete that. Delete that.
I've just cancelled myself.
Cancelled.